Hello, everyone, and welcome to this foundational document overview video. This one, we're covering Federalist 78. That's the Federalist Papers, number 78. This one is by Alexander Hamilton. And the question here is about what can the judicial branch do? This was a large debate, even among the anti-federalists looking at the Constitution. Was this new judicial branch all powerful, or was it completely impotent? Was it capable of almost nothing? Now, even people that signed the Constitution clearly had their misgivings about this, as your study of the judicial branch will reveal. What exactly was its power? You see, with the legislative branch, it was quite clear. They had the power over the laws and the purse. With the executive branch, well, the executive branch is to get things done, carry out, and enforce the laws. Their power was over the sword. What's the symbol of the judicial branch, though? Well, I'll propose to you today that the judicial branch if the technology existed in the time, Alexander Hamilton might have proposed that the judicial branch has the microscope, and that is the power to look at laws closely. What does that mean, and why does that matter? Well, this connects to Alexander Hamilton's argument in Federalist 78. Let's dive in. Federalist 78, a very important feature, even ignoring for a moment the powers of the judicial branch, is the setup, the structure of the judicial branch, what I call the judicial branch recipe. Alexander Hamilton bounces back and forth between what the judicial branch can do and why it is set up in such a specific way. And the biggest part of this recipe is a very simple equation. Two pieces that people actually attacked about the early Constitution are the fact that justices serve for life, as long as they have, quote, good behavior. And the second is that justices are not elected by the people, they are appointed by the president. Why does this matter? Well, Alexander Hamilton makes it very clear that this combination, and only this combination, ensures that justices are only loyal to the Constitution. They are not loyal to the people of the country. They are loyal to the representation of the people of the country, that is the Constitution. They are not loyal to the president who appointed them, because they will be around for much longer than that president. So the justices are only loyal to the written down will of the people, that is the Constitution. And it comes from this unique recipe, the fact that our Supreme Court justices serve for life and are not elected. Important to note, this is not only true of Supreme Court justices, this is true of the other federal judgeship positions as well. Again, they are loyal to the Constitution. Why does that matter? Well, this structure is important justification for the big power and role the judicial branch is given. Now, remember what the job of each branch is. That's going to make these next few slides make a lot more sense. The legislative branch makes the laws. The executive branch enforces the laws. What is it exactly that the judicial branch does? Well, we know why courts exist. They exist to resolve disputes between two parties. And in order to do that, the judicial branch needs to interpret the laws. And in particular, they need to interpret the supreme law of the land, that is the Constitution. But Alexander Hamilton expresses the very real concern that many critics of the Constitution and even some supporters of the Constitution had, which is that, well, we can understand the legislative branch and executive branch simply enough. The legislative branch controls the purse, that is, the laws and the government's money deciding how to do things. The executive branch actually carries those actions out, and maybe more important of all, the executive branch controls the sword, right? Power over our military and over the National Guard, for instance. But the judicial branch interpreting the laws, what exactly does this mean? And what power do 9 people in black robes have for that? Well, it turns out, Alexander Hamilton says, quite a lot. You see, before we can talk about the power of the judicial branch, we had to start with the structure and then get to the role. The structure was that judicial branch recipe, and here's the role. The courts were designed to be an intermediate body between the people and the legislature. What does that mean? On the one hand, we have the legislature making the laws. On the other hand, we have the people being impacted by laws. And in between, sort of standing with one foot on both sides, is the courts. They are an intermediate body. Now, why are the courts there? I hope you're thinking critically and it makes sense to you. The courts are there to serve as a shield for the people. The courts are a shield for the people from unconstitutional laws. Imagine, Alexander Hamilton says, if we had a constitution and then no referee to make sure that it was being followed. Can you imagine? Maybe you play a sport. Let's imagine you play a sport and there are rules written down to the sport and then no referees. Or let's imagine there are rules written down for the sport and then referees that don't enforce those rules. Well, then those rules start to go away. The courts are the referees standing in between the people and their written down will for our country, that is the Constitution, and then the legislative branch that is supposed to be making laws in accordance with that, and the executive branch that is supposed to be carrying out laws. Now, how does this whole process work? Well, this process in which the courts act as a shield is not so simple as though the courts can just block any law they deem unconstitutional. In fact, it goes through an entire process that you will study very closely in the chapter on the Supreme Court, and that process is called judicial review. Judicial review always starts with the government. The government is doing things all the time. Maybe they're passing laws, maybe they're enforcing laws, maybe it's at the state level, maybe it's at the federal level, but the government does something and this impacts the people. The government does something and this impacts the people. Now, let's say the government does something, whether they mean to or not, this impacts the people's freedom of speech. It limits that. Now we have a conflict because the Constitution enshrines our protection of the freedom of speech, and yet the legislature or executive or states have done something that is infringed upon that. What can the people do? Well, the people can sue. They can take things to the courts, and should the appeal process demand it, they will take things all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has that power, not of the purse, they don't control any money, not of the sword, they don't control any military, but they have that power of the microscope to examine those laws closely, to examine what exactly the government has done, and to examine how it is affecting the people, and to last and most importantly, take a very close look at what does the Constitution say. If they find that, wow, yes, the government has done something that has wrongfully abridged a constitutional right, that has wrongfully eliminated a constitutional right, well, then the courts have this power of judicial review. That is the power to say that this law or action is void. It is like it never happened. Alexander Hamilton clearly states this in Federalist 78. That is a bit controversial, because Article 3 of the Constitution does not list this power. In fact, Article 3 of the Constitution doesn't really list any power of the Supreme Court, except for elsewhere in the Constitution where it mentions that the Chief Justice presides over impeachment trials. Can you imagine? The Founding Fathers set up this branch and didn't really list what powers it actually has. Alexander Hamilton clarifies that in 78. The power the Supreme Court has is the power to declare unconstitutional laws as void when people challenge them in the courts. The Supreme Court is the highest law of the land, or the highest court of the land, and they're responsible for interpreting the highest law of the land, the Constitution. When laws don't square up with the Constitution, when government actions don't follow the Constitution, they can declare them void in the process of judicial review. So that is the gist of Federalist 78. Alexander Hamilton didn't quite talk about the microscope himself, but hopefully my analogy has made sense about what exactly the structure, role, and power of the judicial branch is supposed to look like. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great day.